Henry Knox wiped grease from his hands with a worn shop rag, surveying the vehicles awaiting repair in his garage. 15 years of sweat had transformed Knox Customs from a desperate gamble into Pinewood, Montana's most respected auto body shop. The front bell jingled. Russ Mather, Henry's right-hand man since the beginning, entered with 2 coffee cups. "Morning, boss," Russ said, offering the stronger brew. Old man Peterson dropped off that '67 Chevy. Says the transmission's slipping again. Henry accepted the coffee. "Did you tell him it's because he keeps forgetting to change the fluid?" "Tried to. Might as well talk to his dog." Russ leaned against the workbench. "How's things at home?" Henry's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Fine. Nancy's still doing that charity thing. Committee meetings 3 nights a week now," Henry said, focusing on a dent in a Ford F-150. "Says they're planning some big fundraiser." Russ didn't push. 15 years of friendship had taught him when Henry was building walls. The truth was, home hadn't felt right for months. Nancy had grown distant, her smiles never reaching her eyes. There was a time when she'd visit the shop, bring lunch, laugh at his oil-stained coveralls. Now, she barely asked about his day. "Dad," Henry turned to find his daughter Lena standing in the bay door, backpack over one shoulder. At 15, she was Nancy's spitting image, same chestnut hair and sharp cheekbones, but with Henry's quiet intensity and steel blue eyes. "Hey, kiddo. School let out early. Half day. Teacher conferences." Lena glanced around. "Can I hang out here?" "I've got homework, but my office is all yours," Henry said, knowing she didn't want to go home to an empty house or worse. Catch her mother in another lie. Lena hesitated. "Mom's car wasn't at the community center yesterday." Henry froze, then resumed working. Maybe she carpooled. Maybe. Lena's voice held no conviction. She was dressed up real nice when she left. Said she'd be back by 9. Came home after midnight, smelling like... Henry looked up. Like what? Not like herself. Lena's eyes held a wisdom beyond her years. She took a shower right away. Russ suddenly found something urgent to do across the garage. Henry straightened, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow. The military had hardened him. 2 Iraq tours had taken a soft-spoken farm boy and returned a man who measured twice before speaking once. "Don't worry about your mom," he said firmly. "Go on, get your homework done." As the afternoon faded, Henry's thoughts kept circling back to Nancy's coldness, her late nights, her excuses. The shop phone rang. Henry wiped his hands and answered. "Knox Customs." "Mr. Knox?" "It's Shayla Boone, Kate's mom." The voice sounded hesitant. Henry remembered her, a quiet woman whose minivan he'd fixed last winter after her husband skipped town. Her daughter was Lena's best friend. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Boone?" She paused. "I'm not sure if I should. It's about Nancy." Henry's grip tightened on the receiver. "What about her?" "I saw her yesterday. Not at the community center." Another pause. "She was at the Red Creek Motel. With a man. I was driving by and..." "I'm sorry, Mr. Knox. I thought you should know." Henry's face remained impassive, but a cold stone formed in his stomach. "Thank you for calling." His voice betrayed nothing. That night, Henry drove home to the modest 2-story house he'd spent years renovating. Inside, the smell of roast chicken filled the air, Nancy's specialty, the meal she cooked when she wanted something. "You're late," Nancy called from the kitchen. Her voice carried forced lightness. Henry hung his jacket. Had to finish Peterson's Chevy. Nancy appeared, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. Her blue dress hugged curves that had once made his breath catch. Her smile was bright, practiced. "Well, you're just in time. Dinner's ready." Lena sat at the table, eyes moving between her parents like she was watching for landmines. "Smells good," Henry said, washing up. Nancy poured wine for herself only. Henry didn't drink. Never had. "How was work?" she asked, the question mechanical. "Fine." Nancy filled the silence with chatter about townspeople, gossip, plans, a stream of words that required no response. Henry watched her hands as she spoke, noted the fresh manicure. Nancy hadn't done the cooking she claimed. The chicken was store-bought, the potatoes from a box. "More lies." "I've got great news," Nancy announced, her voice rising with manufacturer excitement. The committee is hosting a weekend marriage retreat next month. 3 days at Whitefish Resort. I've already signed us up. Henry looked up from his plate. A retreat. It'll be good for us, Nancy insisted, reaching for his hand across the table. We haven't had time alone in ages. Lena pushed food around her plate. Who's going to stay with me? You can stay with Kate, Nancy answered quickly. I already talked to Shayla. She's fine with it. Henry's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Nancy had talked to Shayla? The same Shayla who'd called him today. I don't need a marriage retreat, Henry said. Nancy's smile tightened. Every marriage needs maintenance, Henry. Even yours. The emphasis wasn't lost on him. Later, after Nancy had gone upstairs to take a bath, another nightly ritual that had emerged in recent months, Henry found Lena sitting on the back porch steps. She's lying about the retreat, Lena said without looking up. About a lot of things. Henry sat beside her, the wood creaking under his weight. What makes you say that? I heard her on the phone last week, talking about getting away. She didn't know I was home. Lena hugged her knees to her chest. Dad, I think she's seeing someone. The words hung in the night air. Henry stared at the stars, the same stars he'd gazed at from desert sands, promising himself he'd make it home to Nancy. Let me handle it, he finally said, placing a hand on Lena's shoulder. Don't worry, I'm not a little kid anymore. You don't have to protect me. Henry looked at his daughter, no longer the pig-tailed girl who'd run to him when he returned from deployment, but becoming a young woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. I'll always protect you, he said. That's not changing. Ever. That night, while Nancy slept, Henry searched the house. In the kitchen junk drawer, beneath warranties and takeout menus, he found a second phone, slim and black, password protected. He didn't need to unlock it. The existence of the phone was enough. He replaced it exactly as he'd found it and went to bed with a plan forming. If Nancy wanted a retreat, they'd go. But not for the reasons she thought. 3 days later, Henry stood in the kitchen, the hidden phone in his hand when Nancy walked in. She froze, her face flickering from shock to fear before settling into practiced innocence. What are you doing with that? Her voice was steady, but her fingers twisted the strap of her purse. Found in the drawer. Henry's voice was flat. Funny, don't remember us getting a second phone. Nancy laughed, the sound brittle. Oh, that. It's for the charity committee. We all got one. Easier to coordinate events. Henry unlocked the screen, no password required. A mistake on Nancy's part. Messages filled the screen, all from a contact labeled Simply D. The most recent, miss you already. 3 weeks is too long. Charity work? Henry asked, turning the screen toward her. Nancy's face hardened, a glimpse of the real woman beneath the mask. Then, just as quickly, tears welled in her eyes. You're going through my things now? Spying on me? Her voice rose, edged with manufactured outrage. What's happened to you, Henry? You've been different, distant, suspicious. This isn't the man I married. Henry had seen combat operators use this tactic. The best defense is a strong offense. Nancy was good. He'd give her that. Who's D? He asked, unmoved by the tears. A committee member, Denise. Nancy crossed her arms. She's going through a divorce. We text about personal stuff sometimes. At 2 a.m. Nancy snatched the phone. She has insomnia. God, Henry, what's gotten into you? You never used to be so paranoid. From the doorway, Lena watched silently, her face pale. You're right, Henry said, surprising both Nancy and himself. I'm sorry. Relief flooded Nancy's features. It's okay. You've been working so hard. All the more reason for that retreat, right? Henry nodded, watching as Nancy tucked the phone into her pocket with a casualness that didn't match the panic he'd glimpsed moments earlier. I think it's exactly what we need, he agreed. That night, Henry sat in his truck outside the Red Creek Motel. The neon sign buzzed in the darkness, casting a sickly red glow across the parking lot. He'd told Nancy he had a late job. She hadn't questioned it, too relieved by his apparent acceptance of her excuses. At 8:42 p.m., a black pickup truck with Holbrook towing emblazoned on the side pulled into the lot. Henry recognized the driver, immediately Tanner Holbrook, ex-con who'd returned to Pinewood 3 years ago and set up a towing business that everyone knew was a front for shadier operations. Henry sank lower in his seat as Tanner checked his watch and entered room 14.20 minutes later. A familiar blue sedan pulled in Nancy's car. She emerged wearing a dress Henry had never seen, her hair loose around her shoulders. She glanced around the parking lot before slipping into room 14. That Henry sat motionless, the confirmation of his suspicions bringing no satisfaction, only a hollow feeling in his chest. He'd known, but seeing was different. His hand tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. That he waited 3 hours. When Nancy finally emerged, her hair was mussed, her makeup smudged. Tanner followed, pulling her back for a kiss that made Henry's vision blur with rage. Then Nancy drove away, back to the lie she called a life, while Tanner lit a cigarette in the doorway, smirking into the night. Henry started his truck but didn't follow Nancy home. Instead, he drove to the shop and spent the night working on an engine rebuild, the mechanical precision helping to calm the storm inside him. The next morning, Henry returned home as if nothing had changed. Nancy was in the kitchen, making breakfast in her bathrobe, humming as if she didn't have a care in the world. "You didn't come home last night," she said, concern etched on her face. "Job ran late. Slept at the shop." He accepted the coffee she offered, studying her over the rim of the mug. "How was your committee meeting?" "Productive," Nancy replied without missing a beat. "We've almost finalized the retreat details." Lena came downstairs, her eyes immediately finding Henry's. Relief crossed her face when she saw him, as if she'd worried he might not return. "Morning, Dad." "Hey, kiddo. Ready for that math test today?" Lena nodded, grabbing a piece of toast. "Can I come by the shop after?" "Always," Henry said. Nancy frowned slightly. "Lena, you're spending too much time at that garage. It's not appropriate for a young lady." "I like it there," Lena said, her chin lifting in a gesture that mirrored Henry's own stubbornness. "Well, I don't like it. You should be with friends, doing normal teenage things." Nancy's voice had an edge to it. "Not surrounded by grease and men." "One man," Lena corrected. "My dad." The tension crackled between mother and daughter. Henry recognized it for what it was: Nancy trying to separate them, isolate him further. "She can come to the shop," Henry said firmly. End of discussion. Nancy's smile vanished, replaced by a coldness that seemed more genuine than any warmth she'd shown lately. "Fine. Have it your way. Always do." The morning of the retreat dawned clear and cold, Montana autumn painting the mountains in crimson and gold. Henry loaded their bags into Nancy's sedan at her insistence. "My car has better heating," she'd said, "and the seats are more comfortable for a long drive." Henry hadn't argued. Nancy rarely let him drive her car, claiming the leather seats would absorb the garage smells from his clothes. Today, however, she handed him the keys without hesitation. "You drive?" she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm feeling a little tired." Lena stood on the porch, arms crossed against the morning chill, watching them with worried eyes. "Be safe," she called, the words carrying more weight than they should. Henry nodded, a silent promise passing between father and daughter. They took the longer route, winding through mountain passes on roads less traveled. Nancy was unusually quiet, her attention fixed on her phone, the regular one. Not the secret one Henry knew was tucked in her purse. "Beautiful day," Henry remarked, navigating a sharp curve. Nancy glanced up briefly. Oh yes. Lovely." Her disinterest was palpable. Once, years ago, they'd taken Sunday drives just to watch the mountains change with the seasons. Nancy would point out wildflowers, plan picnics by alpine lakes. That woman was long gone. An hour into the drive, Nancy cleared her throat. "Mind if I nap a bit? Didn't sleep well last night." "Go ahead," Henry said. Knowing she wasn't tired, she was avoiding conversation, avoiding him. Nancy reclined her seat slightly and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing deepened, either in genuine sleep or convincing performance. Henry drove on, the road narrowing as it climbed higher into the mountains. The trees pressed closer, casting dappled shadows across the asphalt. Few other cars passed. This route was mainly used by locals who knew the shortcuts, as they rounded a particularly tight bend. Henry felt a slight delay between his foot on the brake pedal and the car's response. He tapped the brake again, frowning at the sponginess. Something wasn't right. He downshifted, slowing the car without relying solely on the brakes. Nancy stirred but didn't wake. The road straightened briefly before another curve. Henry pressed the brake harder, the pedal, now, sinking almost to the floor. The car slowed marginally, but not enough. He pumped the pedal, nothing. "Nancy," he said sharply. "Wake up." Her eyes snapped open too quickly for someone truly asleep. "What's wrong?" "Brakes are failing." Instead of panic, her expression showed something else, something that confirmed Henry's worst suspicions. She'd known. She'd planned this. The road ahead curved sharply, a guardrail the only barrier between the pavement and a steep drop. Henry fought the wheel, trying to maintain control as the car picked up speed on the decline. "The emergency brake," Nancy cried, her performance of concern almost convincing. Henry reached for the handle, but even as he pulled it, he knew it wouldn't work. Not if this was planned. The car struck the guardrail with a sickening crunch of metal. The impact sent them spinning. Henry fought the wheel, his military training kicking in. Control what you can, accept what you can't. The world outside blurred into a kaleidoscope of trees and sky. Nancy screamed, a real scream this time, as the plan she'd helped orchestrate spun out of control. The car careened down the embankment, bouncing violently over rocks and fallen trees. A final impact sent Henry's head snapping forward against the steering wheel. Pain exploded behind his eyes, warm blood trickling down his forehead. The airbags deployed a second too late. Henry's vision swam. Through the haze, he saw Nancy slumped against her door, unmoving, blood matting her hair. Then darkness claimed him. Light and sound returned in fragments. Sirens wailing, voices shouting, metal groaning as rescue workers pried open doors. Got two victims, both unconscious. Henry felt hands stabilizing his neck, checking his pulse. "This one's conscious. Sir, can you hear me?" Henry forced his eyes open, his vision blurry but clearing. A paramedic's face swam into focus. "My wife," he managed, tasting blood. "We're taking care of her, sir. Don't try to move." They worked quickly, extracting Henry first. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, he caught a glimpse of Nancy being carefully removed from the passenger side. Her face was eerily peaceful despite the blood. The ambulance ride passed in a fog of pain and disjointed thoughts. Henry fought to stay conscious, to make sense of what had happened. The brakes. Nancy's lack of surprise. The route she'd insisted on. It wasn't an accident. She tried to kill him to the hospital. Doctors swarmed around him, cutting away his clothes, shining lights in his eyes, asking questions he could barely process. X-rays, CT scans, stitches for the gash on his forehead. "You're lucky," a doctor told him hours later. Concussion, 3 broken ribs, laceration requiring 15 stitches, but nothing life-threatening. "Your wife, however, how is she?" Henry asked, not out of concern, but necessity. "In surgery. Head trauma, internal bleeding. It's touch and go." Henry nodded, feeling nothing. They moved him to a private room, promising updates on Nancy's condition. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, piecing together the puzzle. The secret phone, Tanner Holbrook, the tampered brakes, Nancy's insistence on taking her car, on him driving. The perfect murder, a tragic accident on a dangerous mountain road. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Lena stood in the doorway, pale and frightened, with Shayla Boone beside her. "Dad!" Lena rushed to his bedside, careful not to jostle his injuries. "I'm okay, kiddo," he assured her, wincing as he tried to sit up. "Sheriff Cargill called us," Shayla explained. "Said there'd been an accident. I brought Lena straight away." Henry nodded gratefully to Shayla. "Thank you." Lena's eyes welled with tears as she took in his bandaged head, the bruises darkening on his face. "They said Mom's in surgery. She is." Henry kept his voice neutral. Lena glanced at Shayla, then leaned closer to Henry, lowering her voice. "Dad, Mom's awake. We have to leave. If she wakes up, it's too late." Henry stared at his daughter, confusion giving way to understanding. "What are you saying?" Lena's eyes darted to the door. "Not here." Shayla, sensing the tension, stepped forward. "I'll get you both some coffee." Take your time. Once Shayla left, Lena pulled Henry's good arm, urging him to stand. They said I shouldn't move yet, Henry protested. We don't have time, Lena insisted, fear making her voice crack. Mom's not in surgery. I heard the nurses. She regained consciousness 10 minutes ago. They're moving her to a room now. Henry allowed Lena to help him into the empty hallway, pain shooting through his ribs with each step. She pulled him into a supply closet, closing the door behind them. She wanted you dead, Dad, Lena said, tears streaming down her face. She and Tanner, they were planning it. I overheard them weeks ago. The confirmation hit Henry like a physical blow, despite his suspicions. Tell me everything. Lena wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. I found Mom's secret phone first. Read the messages. They've been seeing each other for months. But then I heard them talking about money. Insurance money. My life insurance, Henry realized. The policy he'd taken out after his discharge, $250,000. Not a fortune, but enough for Nancy and Tanner to start over somewhere new. They were going to make it look like an accident, Lena continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. Tanner knows how to tamper with brakes. He did time for insurance fraud before. Mom was supposed to fake being tired, so you drive. On that exact road, where the drop is steepest. Henry closed his eyes briefly, the full horror of his wife's betrayal washing over him. How long have you known? A month, Lena admitted, guilt in her voice. I wanted to tell you sooner, but Mom was always watching, and I needed proof. I've been recording them when I could. She pulled out her own phone. I have recordings, Dad. Her and Tanner planning everything. Henry stared at his daughter, 15 years old, and carrying such a terrible secret to protect him. We have to go, Lena urged. Now, before Mom tells him some story about you being abusive or something. Before Tanner realizes you're alive. Henry nodded, his military mind already shifting to tactical mode. Assess the situation. Identify the threats. Plan extraction. My clothes. In that cabinet, Lena pointed. They're cut up, but better than a hospital gown. Henry dressed quickly, ignoring the pain that accompanied each movement. His wallet and phone were in a plastic bag with his personal effects. The phone was cracked, but functional. We need a car, he muttered. Shayla will help us, Lena said with certainty. She knows Mom's been cheating. She's the one who told me which motel to watch. Henry paused in the act of pulling on his blood-stained shirt. You've been following her? Lena nodded, her expression hardening in a way that reminded Henry too much of himself. Someone had to. Pride and sorrow mingled in Henry's chest. His daughter shouldn't have had to become a spy in her own home. Shouldn't have had to grow up so fast. Let's find Shayla, he said, opening the closet door cautiously as Shayla's sedan sped down the hospital access road. Henry in the passenger seat with Lena huddled in the back. Every bump sent pain shooting through his broken ribs, but physical discomfort was the least of his concerns. Tell me exactly what you heard, Henry said to Lena, needing to understand the full scope of Nancy's betrayal. Lena pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times, and handed it to him. I recorded this last week. They were in the garage while you were working late. Henry pressed play. Nancy's voice emerged from the tiny speaker, clear and cold in a way he'd never heard before. The insurance pays double for accidental death. $250,000 becomes $500,000, Tanner. We just need to make it look right. Tanner's voice, rough and impatient. I told you, the brake lines are easy. Cut just enough to make them fail gradually. By the time he realizes something's wrong, it'll be too late. That stretch of road past Miller's Creek, perfect spot. No guardrail for 50 yards, straight drop. Nancy again. What if he survives somehow? He won't, Tanner assured her. But if something goes wrong, I've got friends who can finish the job at the hospital. For the right price. The recording ended. Henry sat in stunned silence, the casual discussion of his murder sinking in. 15 years of marriage, and Nancy could plot his death with the same ease as planning a dinner party. There's more, Lena said quietly. I've been recording for weeks. They never noticed. Mom's careless when she's with him. Henry handed the phone back, his face expressionless. Where did you learn to do this? Lena shrugged, suddenly looking very young despite her actions. YouTube. Kate helped me set up the recording app. Shayla glanced in the rearview mirror. Kate doesn't know the details. Lena just told her she was worried about her mom having an affair. Henry nodded, processing this information. We can't go home. They'll look there first. My place, Shayla suggested. It's on the other side of town. You can lay low while you figure things out. Henry's phone buzzed again, Boyd calling now. He silenced it. Dad, Lena said hesitantly. What are we going to do? Mom will tell everyone you're crazy, abusive. Tanner knows people, bad people. Henry turned to look at his daughter, his decision already made. We're going to make them pay. Both of them. Shayla's eyes widened. Henry, you need to be careful. The law won't help. Henry cut her off. Not with Nancy spinning her story and Tanner's connections. They tried to kill me, planned to kill me. I'm not waiting for them to try again. What about proof? Shayla asked. Lena's recordings. Might not be enough, Henry finished. We need more. They drove in silence for several minutes, the Montana landscape flying past. Then Henry spoke again, his voice calm but deadly serious. Shayla, I need you to drop us at Russ's place. Not your house. The fewer people who know where we are, the better. Shayla nodded, changing direction. What should I tell people if they ask? That you dropped us at home. That I was disoriented from the crash, talking nonsense about Nancy trying to kill me. Henry's tactical mind was working overtime. If they think I'm home, that's where they'll look. What about Kate? Lena asked. She stays with you, Henry told Shayla. Don't let her out of your sight. If Nancy or Tanner approach her trying to find Lena, I understand, Shayla said grimly that Russ's cabin sat at the end of a dirt road, 5 miles outside town. The one-bedroom hunting lodge wasn't much, but it was isolated and defensible, exactly what Henry needed. Russ opened the door before they'd even knocked, his weathered face tight with concern. Jesus Christ, Henry, he said, taking in the bandaged head and blood-stained clothes. Boyd's been calling everyone. Said there was an accident, that you might be unstable after the head injury. Did he now? Henry's voice was dangerously soft. And what did you tell him? To go to hell. Russ replied without hesitation. I've known you 20 years. If you're unstable, I'm the Queen of England. Relief washed over Henry. He had allies, not many, but enough. Once inside, Russ offered Henry fresh clothes and a stiff drink, which he declined. 15 years sober. Not even attempted murder would break that streak. Nancy's behind this, Henry said bluntly, lowering himself gingerly onto Russ's worn couch. She and Tanner Holbrook tampered with the brakes. Tried to kill me for the insurance money. Russ's expression darkened. That no-good son of a... I knew something was off with her, but this... He shook his head in disbelief. What's the plan, boss? First, we need proof, hard evidence of tampering. The car should still be at the impound lot. Henry turned to Lena. Your recordings are a start, but we need more. I can get to the car, Russ offered. My cousin Mick works security at the impound. Owes me a favor. Henry nodded. Check the brake lines, master cylinder, anything they might have tampered with. Take pictures. Shayla stood awkwardly by the door. I should go. Kate will be home from her dad soon. Thank you, Henry said simply. After Shayla left, promising to keep their location secret, Russ made coffee while Henry took inventory of their situation. His ribs throbbed, his head pounded, but his mind was clear. Lena sat beside him, exhaustion finally catching up to her. You should rest, he told her. So should you, she countered. Russ returned with 3 mugs of black coffee. Boyd's called twice more. Left messages saying he needs your statement. Said Nancy's made some accusations. I bet she has, Henry muttered. He glanced at his phone, 6 missed calls from Boyd, 2 from unknown numbers. He opened Boyd's text messages. Henry, where are you? Nancy's saying some concerning things. Need to talk. Call me ASAP. This is serious. Deputy Brackett is filing a report based on Nancy's statement. Claims of domestic abuse. Henry, don't make this worse by running. Henry's jaw tightened. It was happening exactly as he'd feared. Nancy was moving quickly, setting the narrative. Domestic abuse, he said aloud. That's her play. Lena's face crumpled. How could she do this? How could she lie like that? Because she thinks she can get away with it, Henry answered, his voice hard. Because she doesn't know what we know. His phone buzzed again, a text from a number he didn't recognize. We need to talk. About your wife. I know what really happened. Meet me at the old mill. Midnight. Come alone. Henry showed the message to Russ, who snorted derisively. Trap, Russ said. Gotta be Tanner trying to finish the job. Obviously, Henry agreed. But it tells us something important. They're worried. They know I survived, and they're scrambling. Lena, reading over Henry's shoulder, shivered. They're going to keep coming, aren't they? Henry put an arm around his daughter. Not for long. At 10:30, Henry's phone rang. Shayla. Sheriff's deputies just left my house, she reported, her voice tense. They were looking for you and Lena. Asked a lot of questions about when I last saw you, where I took you. What did you tell them? That I'd drop you at home, like we agreed. But Henry, Vic didn't believe me. That new deputy, Brackett, he's convinced you've done something terrible. Kept asking if I felt safe around you. Henry's expression hardened. Nancy's poisoning the well. There's more, Shayla continued. Tanner Holbrook was here earlier, before the deputies. Said he was a friend of the family, looking for Lena. Kate told him to get lost before I could intervene. Is Kate okay? Shaken but fine. She's smart enough to know something's wrong. I've told her not to talk to anyone about you or Lena. Good, Henry said. Keep her doors locked. If Tanner comes back. How about my ex's shotgun? Shayla interrupted, a steely edge to her voice. He won't be a problem. After hanging up, Henry outlined his plan to Russ. It was simple but effective. Let Tanner believe Henry was desperate and disoriented enough to walk into an obvious trap, while actually setting a counter-trap of their own. I'll drive my truck to the Old Mill Road, park it visible from the main approach, Russ explained. Make it look like you walked in. Meanwhile, you and Lena stay here. And if Tanner shows up here instead? Henry asked. Russ grinned humorlessly, retrieving a hunting rifle from a cabinet. Then he gets a Montana welcome. Be careful, Henry warned. Don't engage. Just make a believe I might show. Lena, who had been listening silently, spoke up. What if he brings people with him? Tanner knows dangerous men. Henry nodded, appreciating his daughter's tactical thinking. That's why Russ won't wait around. Drop the truck, then circle back through the woods. If anyone follows you, you'll see them coming. At 11:15, Russ left with Henry's phone, which would ping off cell towers near the old mill, providing another false trail. Henry and Lena secure the cabin, turning off all lights except a single lamp in the back room. Dad, Lena said as they settled into defensive positions with clear views of both doors. I found something else. At home, before the accident, she pulled a small notebook from her backpack. It was in Mom's hiding spot, the loose floorboard in her closet. I found it when I was looking for her other phone. Henry took the notebook. Inside, in Nancy's neat handwriting, were calculations. Life insurance policies, account numbers, dates. A timeline. His name with $500,000 written beside it. Tanner's messy scrawl in the margins, notes about brake lines, ideal accident locations, contingency plans. Jesus, Henry muttered, flipping through pages of his own planned murder. There's more, Lena continued, turning to the back pages. They've been planning to leave for months. After you were gone. Fake IDs, tickets to Mexico. There's even a receipt for a beach house rental. Henry examined the paperwork, detailed, methodical planning for a new life funded by his death. Cold rage settled in his stomach. His phone rang again. Boyd. This time, Henry answered. Where the hell are you? Boyd demanded without preamble. Somewhere safe, Henry replied evenly. Nancy's pressing charges. Henry says you've been abusing her for months. Says you tampered with the brakes yourself, some kind of murder-suicide attempt after she threatened to leave you. Henry laughed humorlessly. And you believe that? I don't know what to believe, Boyd admitted. But I've got a deputy eager to make his mark with a domestic violence arrest, and a woman with injuries claiming her husband's dangerous. You running isn't helping your case. I'm not running. I'm regrouping. Turn yourself in, Boyd urged. We can sort this out by the book. The book won't help me, Henry said coldly. Nancy and her boyfriend tried to kill me. I have proof. A long pause. Boyfriend? What boyfriend? Tanner Holbrook. Boyd cursed under his breath. That lowlife? Henry, if you've got proof, bring it in. Let me help you. Not yet. First, I need more. Don't do anything stupid, Boyd warned. Whatever they did, whatever you think they did. They tried to kill me, Henry repeated. And they'll keep trying. Tell your eager deputy to look into Tanner Holbrook's criminal record. Tell him to check Nancy's phone records, the second phone she keeps hidden in the kitchen drawer. Tell him to ask why my wife has been planning a trip to Mexico with a convicted felon. He hung up, knowing Boyd well enough to recognize the seeds of doubt had been planted. Russ returned 2 hours later, his expression grim but satisfied. He handed Henry his phone, showing close-up photos of the brake lines in Nancy's car. Clean cut, Russ pointed to a barely visible nick in the metal line. Partial, made to fail gradually under pressure. Mick said the crash investigators hadn't examined the vehicle, yet too busy with the victims. Their mistake. Henry nodded, scrolling through the photos. Clear evidence of tampering, not enough to fail immediately, but sufficient to cause catastrophic brake failure after 20 minutes of mountain driving. There's more, Russ said, pulling a plastic evidence bag from his pocket. Inside was a small utility knife. Found this under the driver's seat. Has Tanner's fingerprints all over it. I'd bet money on it. Perfect, Henry murmured. Evidence was mounting. His phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number, presumably Tanner. Time's running out. Midnight. Old Mill. Last chance. Lena, who had been dozing on the couch, stirred. What time is it? Almost 9, Henry replied, his mind working through possibilities. Go back to sleep. You're not going to meet him, are you? She asked, suddenly alert. No, Henry assured her. But I'm going to let him think I am. Around midnight, a sound outside the cabin made them both freeze, the crunch of tires on gravel. Henry moved to the window, peering carefully around the edge of the curtain. A black pickup truck was approaching slowly, headlights off. Tanner's truck. He figured out, Henry whispered. Get down, stay quiet. The truck stopped 50 yards from the cabin. 2 men emerged, Tanner and another man Henry didn't recognize. Both carry handguns. Knox, Tanner called out. I know you're in there. Just want to talk. Henry remained silent, watching as the men approached cautiously, using the truck for cover. Your wife's worried about you, Tanner continued, his voice falsely concerned. Head injuries making you paranoid. Why don't you come out, and we'll take you back to the hospital. Still, Henry didn't respond. He checked his watch. Russ should be on his way back by now. Tanner tried again. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Knox. You're scaring your daughter. At the mention of Lena, Henry felt rather than saw his daughter tense beside him. Her face in the dim light showed no fear, only cold determination that matched his own. Nancy told me everything, Tanner called. About the fighting, the threats. How you said you'd take her down with you. Those brake lines didn't cut themselves, Knox. The strategy was clear: keep talking, get Henry angry enough to respond, to reveal his position. It might have worked on another man, but Henry had spent years in combat zones learning to control his reactions. The standoff continued for 10 more minutes. Tanner growing increasingly agitated by Henry's silence. Finally, a new sound reached them: distant sirens. Shit, Tanner hissed to his companion. Someone called it in. The men retreated to their truck and sped away, gravel spraying from their tires. Moments later, Russ appeared at the back door, slightly out of breath. Called Boyd from a burner phone. He explained as Henry let him in. Said I saw armed men at my cabin. Figured it would scare them off without giving away that we're here. Henry nodded approvingly. Smart thinking. They'll be back, Lena said quietly. Yes, Henry agreed. But next time we'll be ready. Russ handed Henry his phone. 16 missed calls. Boyd, deputies, unknown numbers. And this. He pointed to a text message from Shayla. Nancy checked out of hospital, AMA. Deputies looking for you now for questioning. Be careful. AMA against medical advice. Nancy was mobile and motivated. Injuries be damned. We need to move, Henry decided. They know we're in the area. Where? Russ asked. Henry considered their options. Back to town, where they least expect us. The shop, Lena suggested. Knox Customs has that old apartment upstairs you used before you met Mom. Henry nodded slowly. It was risky, closer to Nancy, to the sheriff's office, but also provided resources they needed. Before dawn, They loaded into Russ's truck, taking only essentials. The drive back to town required avoiding main roads, but Russ knew every back route in the county. They reached Knox Customs just as the sun crested the eastern mountains. The garage stood dark and quiet, closed sign still hanging on the door from the day of the accident. Henry used his key at the side entrance, leading to a narrow staircase that accessed the small apartment above the shop floor. The space was dusty but functional, a studio with a kitchenette, bathroom, and fold-out couch. Henry had lived here when he first opened the business, before marrying Nancy and buying their house. "Home sweet home," he said wryly, flipping on a light. Lena looked around, curiosity temporarily overshadowing fear. "You lived here?" "For 3 years," Henry confirmed. "Not much, but it was mine." Russ checked the windows, all with clear views of the street and parking lot. "Nobody followed us. I'll open the shop like normal, maintain appearances. You two stay up here." Henry nodded. "First sign of trouble, I'll hit the silent alarm." Russ finished. "Wire directly to your phone." Once Russ left to begin the day's normal operations downstairs, Henry turned his attention to organizing their evidence. Lena's recordings, photos of the tampered brake lines, Nancy's notebook with the murder plans, the utility knife from the car. It was substantial, but would it be enough against Nancy's tears and accusations? Lena, exhausted from the night's tensions, finally succumbed to sleep on the fold-out couch. Henry watched his daughter's chest rise and fall, marveling at her resilience. She'd faced her mother's betrayal with a courage that put most adults to shame. His phone buzzed a text from Boyd. "Need to talk. Just you and me. No deputies." "Name the place." Henry considered the offer. Boyd was the closest thing to a friend he had in law enforcement, but the sheriff was still bound by rules Henry couldn't afford to follow right now. "Not yet," he replied. "Working on something. Give me 24 hours. Boyd's response came quickly. "Don't have 24 hours. Warrants being processed. Being friends won't stop me from doing my job." The message was clear, time was running out. Henry needed to accelerate his plan. He texted Shayla, "Need a favor." Big one. Her reply, "Name it. Spread a rumor. Tell people you heard I'm hiding at the Old Monroe cabin. Make sure Nancy hears it." "Why?" Shayla asked. "Setting a trap," Henry explained. "Need Nancy and Tanner to think they've found me." "Dangerous game," Shayla warned. "Only one I can play right now." Dawn broke over Pinewood with steely gray light filtering through Shayla's kitchen windows. Henry had managed perhaps 2 hours of restless sleep, his military-honed ability to rest anywhere competing with the knowledge that Nancy and Tanner were actively hunting him. Russ arrived early, bringing coffee and news. "Deputies searched the shop," he reported grimly. "Broke the back door lock. They found the apartment. Knew someone had been staying there." Henry nodded, unsurprised. "Anything missing?" "Not that I could tell. I got there as they were leaving." Brackett seemed disappointed. "He's in Nancy's pocket," Henry concluded. "Probably hoped to find or plant something incriminating." They gathered around Shayla's kitchen table. Henry, Russ, Shayla, Lena, and Kate. The evidence sat before them: thumb drives containing videos, audio recordings, photographs, and scanned pages from Nancy's notebook. 3 identical copies, ready for distribution. "First step," Henry began, "is securing the evidence. If something happens to me, the truth still needs to come out." "Nothing's happening to you," Lena said firmly. Henry squeezed her shoulder, but continued. "Russ, you'll take 1 copy to your cousin Mick at the state police barracks in Helena. He's outside Boyd's jurisdiction, outside Tanner's influence." Russ nodded. "He'll keep it safe." "Shayla, you'll lock 1 copy in your safety deposit box at First Montana Bank." "What about the 3rd copy?" Shayla asked. "That one goes to Boyd," Henry answered. "Today." "It's risky," Russ warned. "Boyd's your friend, but he's also sheriff. He has to follow procedure, which is why we're securing the other copies first," Henry agreed. "But Boyd deserves to see this before it goes public. He needs to make his choice, friend or lawman." The plan took shape. Russ would leave immediately for Helena. Shayla would open the bank when it opened at 9. Henry would contact Boyd for a private meeting, away from the sheriff's office where Brackett might interfere. "What about Mom and Tanner?" Lena asked quietly. "They think we're running scared," Henry replied. Let's use that. Shayla, I need you to spread one more rumor. Make sure Nancy hears that I'm planning to flee the state. That I've got a truck waiting at Russ's cabin tonight to take me to Canada. Understanding dawned in Shayla's eyes. You're setting another trap. With me as bait, Henry confirmed. Once Boyd sees the evidence, he'll have what he needs to catch them in the act attempting to murder a man they've already tried to kill once. It's dangerous, Lena protested. Less dangerous than running, Henry countered. They won't stop hunting us. This incident one way or another. By 9:30, the plan was in motion. Russ had departed for Helena with one evidence copy. Shayla had secured another in her safety deposit box. Lena remained with Kate at Shayla's house, both girls under strict instructions not to open the door for anyone. Henry borrowed Shayla's car to drive to the meeting point he'd arranged with Boyd, the old fire watchtower overlooking Pinewood Valley. Remote enough for privacy, public enough that Boyd wouldn't feel he was walking into an ambush. The watchtower had been decommissioned years ago, replaced by more modern forest fire detection systems. Now it stood as a silent sentinel, its wooden stairs creaking under Henry's weight as he climbed to the observation platform 30 feet above the ground. Boyd arrived 10 minutes later, alone as promised. The sheriff looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. At 54, Boyd Cargill had been Pinewood's top lawman for nearly 2 decades. He'd given Henry his first break in town, recommending him for auto repair jobs when Knox Customs was just a dream. This better be good, Henry, Boyd said without preamble, joining him on the platform. I've got a deputy breathing down my neck about an arrest warrant with your name on it. It's good, Henry replied, handing him the thumb drive. Or bad, depending on how you look at it. Boyd eyed the drive skeptically. What am I looking at here? Evidence that Nancy and Tanner Holbrook conspired to murder me. Tampered with the brakes on Nancy's car. Planned to collect double indemnity on my life insurance. When that failed, they tried again. And they're still trying. Boyd's expression remained neutral. Years of law enforcement training, keeping his reactions in check. That's a serious accusation, Henry. It's not an accusation, Henry corrected. It's a fact. Documented, recorded, photographed. Everything you need is on that drive. Boyd pocketed the drive without examining it. Where have you been? Half the county's looking for you. Staying alive, Henry replied simply. Nancy's been spinning quite a story, I hear. Says you've been abusive. That you tampered with the brakes yourself, some kind of murder-suicide when she threatened to leave you. Boyd watched Henry's face carefully. That true? What do you think? Boyd sighed heavily. I think I've known you 15 years, and I've never seen you so much as raise your voice. I think Nancy's story has holes you could drive truck through. But I also think she's got Deputy Brackett convinced, and he's pushing hard for an arrest. You watch what's on that drive, Henry said. Then decide. But do it soon, Boyd. Things are moving fast. How fast? Henry outlined his plan to trap Nancy and Tanner at Russ's cabin that night. Boyd listened without interruption, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. You're using yourself as bait, he observed when Henry finished. That's a hell of a risk. Less risky with you and your deputies waiting in the woods, Henry pointed out. Boyd rubbed his chin thoughtfully. If, and that's a big if what you're showing me checks out, I might be able to arrange something. Unofficially. That's all I'm asking. And if it doesn't check out, Boyd's hand moved subtly toward his service weapon. If I look at this and see nothing but a desperate man's delusions, then I'll turn myself in, Henry said evenly. Right here, right now. But you need to watch it first. The two men stared at each other, years of friendship hanging in the balance. Give me an hour, Boyd finally said. Got a laptop in my cruiser. I'll review it there. No one else needs to see this yet. Henry nodded, relief washing through him. 1 hour. 53 minutes later, Boyd returned. His face was ashen, his usual stoic expression replaced by barely contained fury. Jesus Christ, Henry, he said hoarsely. I've known Nancy for years. How could she? Henry didn't need to hear more. Boyd believed him. The evidence had done its job. What's your plan? Boyd asked, all skepticism gone from his voice. Shayla spreads the rumor that I'm fleeing tonight. Russ's cabin is remote, perfect for an ambush in either direction. I'll be there at sundown, making it look like I'm preparing to run. Nancy and Tanner will come. thinking they have one last chance to silence me. And I'll be waiting, Boyd finished. With as many deputies as you trust, Henry emphasized. Not Brackett. Boyd nodded grimly. Brackett suspended as of an hour from now. Convenient timing for a routine audit of evidence handling procedures. His expression hardened. I trusted that kid. Brought him onto the force myself. Nancy's good at manipulation, Henry said, not unsympathetically. She fooled me for 15 years. The drive to Russ's cabin passed in tense silence. Henry sat beside Boyd in the front of the cruiser while Lena huddled in the back, her face pale but determined. The plan was simple in theory. Henry would make himself visible at the cabin, creating the impression he was preparing to flee. Boyd's deputies, positioned in the surrounding woods, would wait until Nancy and Tanner made their move, then close the trap. Remember, Boyd cautioned as they approached the final turn, keep it visible but believable. They need to think you're distracted, vulnerable. Henry nodded, his mind already shifting into the tactical mindset that had kept him alive through 2 tours in Iraq. Drop me at the bend. I'll walk in more visible that way. Boyd complied, stopping the cruiser at a curve in the dirt road. We'll be listening through the radio mic. Any sign of trouble, say the word firewood. That's the signal to move in. Understood. Henry turned to Lena in the back seat. Stay with Boyd. No matter what you hear, what you think is happening, stay here. Lena nodded, her eyes wide with fear, but her jaw set with determination. Be careful, Dad. The walk to the cabin took 7 minutes. Henry deliberately keeping to the open path rather than using the cover of trees. If Nancy and Tanner were watching, and he was certain they needed to see him, needed to believe their opportunity had arrived, that Russ's cabin looked exactly as they'd left it the previous day, undisturbed in the gathering dusk. Henry made a show of checking around the property before entering, his movements casual but with an undercurrent of urgency that suggested a man preparing to run. Inside, he turned on lights, opened and closed cabinets, creating the impression of someone gathering supplies. Through the window, he periodically glanced toward the road, the picture of a fugitive expecting trouble but hoping to avoid it. 20 minutes passed. Henry maintained the charade, occasionally speaking into the radio mic concealed under his jacket, updating Boyd on his preparations, further selling the illusion for anyone who might be listening at the 30-minute mark. He heard at the distant crunch of tires on gravel, a vehicle approaching with headlights off. Henry continued his performance, pretending not to notice as he stuffed clothing into a duffel bag. The vehicle stopped some distance away. Through the cabin's thin walls, Henry detected muffled voices, car doors opening and closing. They were here that he moved to the window, making a show of peering anxiously into the darkness before returning to his packing. The radio mic transmitted everything to Boyd, who would be coordinating his deputies, positioning them for the arrest. Footsteps approached not from the road, but from the rear of the cabin. Smart. Henry had expected no less from Tanner, a man who'd evaded justice before, that a floorboard creaked beneath his feet as he crossed to the kitchenette, removing canned goods from a shelf and placing them in the duffel. The cabin door burst open. Tanner entered first, gun raised, followed by the 2 men from the Monroe cabin, Marco with a tattooed neck and a heavy-set man whose name Henry didn't know. All 3 were armed. No sign of Nancy yet. Evening, Knox, Tanner said, his voice deceptively casual. Going somewhere. Henry straightened slowly, hands visible. Just getting some supplies. Supplies. Right. Tanner smirked, gesturing for his companions to check the cabin's other rooms. Here you're planning a trip. Canada, is it? Don't know what you're talking about, Henry replied evenly, mentally noting positions, distances, potential weapons within reach. The nearest deputy was probably 200 yards away, would take at least 30 seconds to reach the cabin once signaled. Sure you do. Tanner approached, keeping his gun trained on Henry's chest. Nancy's worried about you, man. Head injuries got you confused, saying crazy things. Best if you come with us, get some help. I bet Nancy's worried. Henry agreed, his tone deliberately neutral. Where is she? Waiting in the car. Something flickered across Tanner's face, surprised that Henry had deduced Nancy's presence, perhaps. She's concerned about your mental state. We all are. The other men returned, shaking their heads, no one else in the cabin. Tanner relaxed slightly, lowering his gun a few inches. Henry remained still, waiting. "Here's how this goes," Tanner continued. "You come with us, nice and quiet. We take you somewhere you can get help. Everyone wins. And if I don't?" Henry asked. Tanner's expression hardened. "Then we have a problem. See, Nancy's filed those domestic abuse charges. Deputies are looking for you. Resisting arrest, fleeing custody, that's serious business, Henry." "I'm not under arrest," Henry pointed out. "And you're not deputies. Concerned citizens," Tanner countered, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Just try and help our local law enforcement locate a dangerous man." The charade was wearing thin. Henry needed to push things forward, get Tanner to reveal his true intentions where Boyd and the deputies could hear. "Cut the act, Tanner," Henry said coldly. "We both know why you're here. Same reason you tampered with Nancy's brakes. Same reason you're helping her collect my life insurance." Tanner's smile vanished. "Don't know what you're talking about." "The accident wasn't an accident," Henry continued, watching Tanner's companions exchange glances. "Nancy planned it. You executed it. For the money. $500,000 if I died accidentally, right?" Tanner's jaw tightened. "You hit your head harder than we thought." "Firewood," Henry said, clearly the signal for Boyd to move in. "I've got plenty of evidence, Tanner. Recordings of you and Nancy planning the whole thing. Photos of the tampered brake lines. Nancy's notebook with all the details. It's over." Tanner's expression shifted from fake concern to genuine alarm. "Search him," he barked to his companions. "Find his phone. Now." The heavy-set man stepped forward, roughly patting Henry down, finding nothing. "No phone, boss." "Then how?" Tanner began, before understanding dawned in his eyes. "You're wired." He raised his gun again, aiming directly at Henry's head. "Who's listening? The sheriff? Take it off. Now." Henry remained motionless. "You shoot me, you're done." Murder of an unarmed man. No self-defense claim will hold up. "Shut up," Tanner shouted, his composure cracking. "Marco, check outside. Pete, find whatever he's using to transmit." Marco moved toward the door, while Pete approached Henry again, intent on finding the hidden mic outside. Branches cracked as Boyd's deputies began moving in. Tanner's head snapped toward the sound. What was that? It was the moment Henry had been waiting for. Tanner distracted, his focus divided. In one fluid motion, Henry grabbed the heavy-set Pete as he approached, using the man's own momentum to throw him into Tanner. Both men stumbled, Tanner's gun discharging into the ceiling as they fell. Marco turned back from the door, raising his weapon, but Henry was already moving. He seized a cast-iron skillet from the stove, hurling it with military precision. The makeshift projectile struck Marco's arm, sending his gun clattering to the floor. Tanner struggled to his feet, still gripping his weapon, but Henry was on him in an instant. 15 years of rage at Nancy's betrayal, at the plot to kill him, at the danger to Lena, fueled his attack. He struck Tanner with brutal efficiency, targeting vulnerable points: solar plexus, throat, temple. Tanner collapsed, blood streaming from his nose, gun falling from nerveless fingers. Pete lunged for the weapon, but Henry's boot came down on his hand, grinding bones until the man screamed. Marco had recovered his own gun, aiming shakily with his uninjured arm. "Don't move," he shouted. "I'll shoot." Henry assessed the situation with cold clarity. Marco 15 feet away, injured but armed. Pete incapacitated beneath his foot. Tanner semi-conscious on the floor. Deputies approaching, but not yet inside. "Marco," Henry said calmly, "think about what you're doing. Attempted murder of an unarmed man? That's 20 years minimum. Is Tanner worth that to you?" Uncertainty flickered across Marco's tattooed face. His gun hand wavered. "Put it down," Henry continued. "Walk away now. Your charges are reduced. Tanner and Nancy go down for the conspiracy. You're just an accessory after the fact." The cabin door burst open. Boyd entered first, service weapon raised, followed by 2 deputies with shotguns. "Sheriff's Department, drop your weapons. Everyone on the ground now." Marco froze, caught between options. For a heartbeat, Henry thought he might actually fire, might try to shoot his way out. Then the gun slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor as he raised his hands. "Smart choice," Henry told him quietly. Boyd's deputies secured the scene with practiced efficiency, cuffing the three men while Henry explained what had transpired. Tanner, now fully conscious, glared murderously but remained silent as deputies recited his rights. "Nancy?" Henry asked Boyd. Deputies spotted her vehicle parked down the road. Boyd replied, "She tried to flee when she heard the gunshot. They're bringing her in now." Relief washed through Henry, not just that the immediate danger had passed, but that the nightmare might finally be ending. Boyd clapped him on the shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of respect. Outside, another sheriff's vehicle approached, lights flashing. Boyd's radio crackled with confirmation. They had Nancy in custody. She'd surrendered without resistance once confronted with deputies, her mask of innocence finally cracking. Lena emerged from Boyd's cruiser, running toward the cabin despite deputies' attempts to stop her. Henry met her halfway, enfolding her in a protective embrace. "It's over," he told her, the words feeling strange yet true. "They can't hurt us anymore." Over Lena's shoulder, Henry watched as deputies led Tanner and his accomplices to waiting vehicles. Tanner's face was a mask of hatred and thwarted rage. Their eyes met briefly, predator and intended prey, roles now reversed. Nancy emerged from a deputy's vehicle, hands cuffed behind her back. Even in custody, she maintained an air of injured dignity, chin raised defiantly. When she spotted Henry and Lena together, something in her expression shifted, not guilt or remorse, but calculation, reassessment of her options. "Henry," she called, her voice breaking on practiced tears. "This is all a mistake. You have to tell them. Save it." Boyd interrupted, stepping between them. "Mrs. Knox, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, and filing false police reports. You have the right to remain silent." As Boyd continued reciting the Miranda rights, Nancy's gaze never left Henry's face. She was looking for weakness, for the soft-hearted man who'd loved her unconditionally for 15 years. That man was gone, replaced by someone hardened by betrayal, forged in the crucible of survival. "Forgiveness is for the weak," Henry said quietly. "And I'm not weak anymore." Nancy's face crumpled as deputies led her away. The mask had finally fallen. Spring arrived in Montana with its usual fitful starts and retreats. 6 months had passed since the trial, almost a year since the crash that had revealed Nancy's true nature. Henry stood outside Knox Customs, surveying the building with critical eyes. The garage had prospered despite the scandal, perhaps even because of it. What had been a successful small business was now thriving, with enough work to justify hiring a third mechanic. Russ emerged from the garage bay, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "Sign guy's on his way. Should be here in about an hour." Henry nodded, satisfaction warming his chest. "Place looks good." They'd spent the past month renovating the shop, expanding into the vacant building next door, adding 2 more service bays, upgrading the equipment. The apartment above, once Henry's temporary refuge, had been converted into a proper office space. "Nervous?" Russ asked, glancing sideways at his friend. "No," Henry replied, then reconsidered. "Maybe a little." "She'll be thrilled," Russ assured him. "Kid's got grease in her veins, just like her old man." The she in question was currently at school, finishing her sophomore year with honors despite everything she'd endured. Lena had no idea what awaited her at the garage today, a surprise Henry had been planning for months. At T3:30, Lena's familiar figure appeared down the street, backpack slung over one shoulder as she walked from the school bus stop. Henry and Russ positioned themselves in front of the garage, deliberately blocking the view of the building's facade. "What's going on?" Lena asked as she approached, noting their strange behavior and barely suppressed smiles. "Like what?" Henry asked innocently. "Like you're hiding something," Lena replied, trying to peek around them, but I could see that moment. A truck pulled up, a worker in the cab, giving Henry a thumbs up. "Perfect timing," Russ muttered. "Lena," Henry began, "you know how much this place means to me, how I built it from nothing after leaving the service." Lena nodded, confusion evident on her face. "Yeah, of course. Well, I've been thinking about the future, about legacy, about what matters. Henry took a deep breath. This past year showed me what's truly important. And that's you, your happiness, your future. He stepped aside, revealing the newly installed sign above the garage door. Where once had hung the simple Knox Customs logo, a new sign now gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. Knox and Daughter Customs. Lena stared at the sign, her mouth opening in shock. Dad? Is that? Are you serious? Never been more serious about anything, Henry confirmed. I've already filed the paperwork. You're officially part owner. Well, you will be when you turn 18. Until then, it's in a trust with your name on it. Tears welled in Lena's eyes. But I don't know enough yet. I'm still learning, and you'll keep learning. Summers, weekends, after college, if that's what you want. Henry placed his hands on her shoulders. This place will always be here for you. No pressure, no expectations. Just a guarantee that whatever path you choose, you've got solid ground to stand on. Lena threw her arms around Henry, burying her face against his chest. Thank you, she whispered. I won't let you down. Not possible, Henry assured her, returning the embrace. Later that evening, after closing the shop and celebrating with pizza, Henry and Lena sat on their front porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of gold and purple. The house had been transformed over the past months, walls repainted, furniture rearranged, Nancy's presence systematically erased with each change. Dad, Lena said, breaking the companionable silence. Are you happy? The question caught Henry off guard. He'd been so focused on survival, on justice, on rebuilding their lives, that he hadn't stopped to consider such a fundamental question. I think so, he answered thoughtfully. Not in the same way as before. It's different now. Better different, or worse different? Lena pressed. Henry considered the question seriously. Different. More authentic, maybe. Before, I was happy with what I thought. I had a loving wife, a good kid, a successful business. Now I know some of that was a lie, but what remains is solid. Real. Lena nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. I think I'm happy too. Not all the time. Sometimes I still get angry about what happened about Mom. But mostly, I feel okay. That's a victory, Henry told her. After everything, okay is a win. As darkness settled over Pinewood, father and daughter remained on the porch, discussing plans for the garage, for the summer, for the future. Shayla would be bringing Kate over tomorrow for a cookout. Boyd and his wife had invited them to their lake cabin next weekend. Life was continuing, routines establishing themselves, connections strengthening. Henry Knox had not forgiven. The betrayal cut too deep, the wound still too fresh even a year later. But he had moved forward, refusing to let Nancy's actions define his future or Lena's. They had rebuilt from the ruins, fashioning something new and sturdy from what remained. The mask had fallen, revealing ugly truths behind a facade of family harmony. But from that revelation had come strength, Lena's courage, Henry's resilience, the loyalty of true friends. Nancy had failed to destroy what she couldn't control, and in her failure, Henry and Lena had discovered what truly mattered. AS stars appeared overhead. The leather office chair creaked as Colton Ramsey leaned back, loosening his silk tie after another successful day at Reynolds and Burke Marketing. The Chicago skyline stretched before him through floor-to-ceiling windows, buildings glowing amber in the setting sun. His corner office on the 38th floor was a testament to 15 years of relentless dedication. The same dedication he'd given to his marriage. His phone buzzed. Another message from Lainey. Working late. Don't wait up. Love you, the same word she'd been sending for weeks now. The same excuse that had begun to sound as hollow as their goodbye kisses. He stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the screen, remembering a time when love you meant something real. Everything all right, Mr. Ramsey? He looked up to find Monica, his assistant of 8 years, standing in the doorway. Her coat was draped over her arm, reading glasses hanging from their chain around her neck. She had that knowing look she'd perfected over the years, the one that said she could see right through his forced smile. Just fine, Monica. He slipped his phone into his pocket. Have a good evening. You too, sir. She hesitated. And Mr. Ramsey? Whatever it is, you'll figure it out. You always do. After she left, Colton pulled up his calendar, the nagging doubt in his gut demanding attention. He started counting Lainey had been working late exactly 12 times in the past month. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore, just like the way she guarded her phone, the mysterious lunch meetings, and how she'd stopped wearing the diamond necklace he'd given her for their 10th anniversary. The drive home felt longer than usual, his thoughts circling like vultures. Traffic crawled along Lakeshore Drive, giving him too much time to remember all the little changes. How Lainey had started going to the gym more often, buying new clothes, spending extra time on her appearance. Changes that once might have seemed innocent, but now formed a pattern he couldn't unsee. 10 years of marriage. A decade of building a life together, of trust and commitment. He'd given her everything. The lakefront house she'd always wanted, the interior design business she'd dreamed of starting, unwavering support through every up and down. Or so he'd thought when he pulled into their driveway. Lainey's white Mercedes was already there. He checked his watch, 7:30 p.m. So much for working late. The house was quiet when he entered, but he heard the shower running upstairs. Their entrance hall still displayed the photos from happier times. Their wedding day, anniversaries, vacations. Colton stopped before a picture from their trip to Greece last year. Lainey's smile had seemed so genuine then, her arms wrapped around his waist as they posed before the Santorini sunset. Had she been faithful then? Or had the lies already begun? Lainey's purse sat on the kitchen counter, her phone next to it. She'd always been careful with that phone lately, never leaving it unattended. But now, as if fate had finally decided to show its hand, the screen lit up with a notification that Colton's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the phone. In 10 years of marriage, he'd never checked her messages before. Trust had been their foundation, or so he believed. The doubt that had been eating at him for weeks finally overcame his principles. The notification preview showed enough. Can't wait to see you again, baby. Last night was amazing. Same time next week. The sender's name made his blood run cold. Jackson Hale. Colton knew him. Everyone in their social circle knew Jackson Hale, the arrogant real estate mogul who thought his wealth made him untouchable. The same Jackson who was married to Delaney, who had attended their dinner parties, who had looked Colton in the eye and shaken his hand while sleeping with his wife. That a memory surfaced, sharp as broken glass. Last month's charity dinner at the Drake Hotel. Jackson had been there with Delaney, Lainey wearing that new red dress she'd bought specially for the occasion. Colton had noticed them talking, but hadn't thought anything of it. Now he remembered the subtle touches, the lingering glances, the way Lainey had laughed at whatever Jackson was saying. The shower stopped running upstairs. With precise movements, Colton placed the phone back exactly as he'd found it and moved to the living room. He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey from the crystal decanter, a wedding gift from Lainey's parents. His hands were steady now, but inside, something had shattered when Lainey came downstairs, wrapped in her silk robe with wet hair clinging to her neck. She jumped slightly at seeing him. "Oh, you're home early." Colton took a slow sip of whiskey, studying her over the rim of his glass. The woman before him looked the same as always, his beautiful wife of 10 years. But now he saw her differently. Every gesture, every expression, seemed calculated, false. "Am I?" His voice remained casual, controlled. "Thought you were working late." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous tell he'd grown to recognize. The meeting finished earlier than expected. Must have been some meeting. His grip on the glass tightened imperceptibly. Important client? Just the usual end-of-quarter reports. She moved to the kitchen, keeping her back to him as she poured herself a glass of wine. The same wine Jackson had sent over after their last dinner party. "How was your day?" "Enlightening." She turned, frowning slightly. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." He finished his whiskey and stood. "I'm going to take a shower." He climbed the stairs slowly, each step measured and deliberate. Their bedroom still smelled of her perfume Chanel No. 5, his Christmas gift to her last year. How many times had she worn it for Jackson? The bathroom mirror reflected his face as he loosened his tie. He looked the same as he had this morning, but everything had changed. The man who'd left for work believing in his marriage was gone. In his place stood someone harder, colder, someone who would make them pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment of mockery. Later that night, lying in bed beside her, Colton listened to Lainey's steady breathing. She'd fallen asleep easily, peaceful in her deception. He stayed awake, plans forming in his mind. This wasn't going to be a simple confrontation. No, they deserved something more elaborate, something that would destroy not just their affair, but their entire world. His phone buzzed softly, an email notification. The Thompson Charity Gala invitation had arrived, requesting the pleasure of their company next week. Colton smiled in the darkness. Sometimes the universe had a sense of irony. A.S. Lainey shifted in her sleep. Turning away from him, Colton made his decision. The gala would be perfect. Everyone who mattered in Chicago would be there, watching as he revealed every dirty secret, every lie, every betrayal. But first he needed an ally, someone who had as much to lose as he did, someone who would understand the need for revenge, that he needed to talk to Delaney Hale. Over the next week, Colton became a hunter stalking his prey. Each morning, he arrived at his office earlier than usual, using the quiet hours to build his case. His laptop became a repository of betrayal, a digital record of every lie, every secret meeting, every piece of evidence that would eventually bring their world crashing down. "Cancel my lunch meetings this week, Monica," he instructed his assistant. "I have some personal matters to handle." Those personal matters involved careful surveillance. The first day, he followed Lainey's Mercedes to the downtown business district. She parked near the Rivera Hotel, a discreet but expensive establishment. 20 minutes later, Jackson's black Range Rover pulled into the same garage. Colton sat in his car, photographing them with a telephoto lens he'd purchased specifically for this purpose. 2 hours later, they emerged separately, but their flushed faces and Lainey's slightly disheveled hair told the whole story. The next day, he hired a private investigator not to gather evidence, but to compile background information on Jackson Hale. The file arrived within hours, painting a picture of a man whose success was built on cutting corners and stepping on others. Jackson had started in real estate during the 2008 financial crisis, buying up foreclosed properties at rock-bottom prices from desperate families. He'd turned those tragedies into a fortune, expanding into commercial real estate and development. Now he owned half a dozen high-rises in downtown Chicago, each project surrounded by whispers of bribes and violated regulations. "Mr. Ramsey?" His investigator's voice crackled over the phone. "There's something else you should know. Mr. Hale has a pattern. This isn't his first affair." Colton's grip tightened on his phone. "Tell me everything." 3 years ago, he had an affair with his project manager's wife. When it came out, the manager was quietly transferred to their Detroit office. Last year, there was another incident with a client's wife. The client's business suddenly faced multiple code violations until they moved their contracts elsewhere. "So he's a predator," Colton said softly. "A careful one. He picks married women, preferably from his social circle. Makes them feel special, desired. Then when it falls apart, he has enough dirt on everyone to ensure their silence." But Jackson had made a mistake this time. He'd chosen the wrong man's wife. Colton spent his lunch hours parked outside their usual meeting spots, the River North Bistro, where they shared intimate lunches in a private booth, the boutique hotel in the Gold Coast where they disappeared for hours. He photographed everything, noting times, dates, locations. The evidence mounted. Credit card statements showed matching charges at hotels and restaurants. Security footage from his office building caught them in the parking garage, stealing kisses like teenagers. Each piece of evidence was carefully cataloged, building an ironclad case of their betrayal. One afternoon, he spotted them at a sidewalk cafe. Lainey threw her head back, laughing at something Jackson said, her hand resting on his arm. The intimacy of the gesture made Colton's stomach turn. He snapped several photos, adding them to his growing collection. That evening, Lainey came home humming, a shopping bag from an expensive boutique swinging from her arm. "You're in a good mood," Colton observed, watching her over his laptop screen. "Had a great meeting with a potential client." She kissed his cheek, and he forced himself not to recoil. "They're interested in redesigning their entire corporate headquarters." More lies. He'd watch her spend 3 hours with Jackson at that cafe. Not a client in sight. "That's wonderful, honey. Who's the client?" She hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Oh, a new tech startup. Very promising. The lies came so easily to her now. He wondered if she even felt guilty anymore. Later that night. He reviewed his evidence. Photos, timestamps, credit card statements, hotel receipts, all meticulously organized. But it wasn't enough. Public humiliation required perfect timing, perfect execution. He needed someone who understood the stakes, someone with inside knowledge of Jackson's world, that he needed Delaney Hale. Finding her private number wasn't difficult. As the wife of a prominent real estate developer, she sat on multiple charity boards. A few calls to business contacts, a carefully worded request, and he had her direct line sitting in his home office. Colton stared at the number on his screen. In the kitchen, he could hear Laney preparing dinner, probably texting Jackson between chopping vegetables. The thought steeled his resolve that he pressed dial. The phone rang 3 times before a cultured voice answered. "This is Delaney Hale." "Mrs. Hale? This is Colton Ramsey. We need to talk." "Colton?" Her voice carried a note of surprise. "What's this about?" "It's about our spouses. Could we meet somewhere private?" A long pause followed. He could almost hear her mind working, calculating possibilities and risks. Finally, she spoke, her voice careful and measured. "The Four Seasons, 2 hours. I'll have a private room reserved." "Perfect." The pieces were falling into place. The Four Seasons private dining room exuded old money, with its cream-colored walls and crystal chandeliers casting warm light over mahogany furniture. Delaney Hale sat at the corner table, her posture perfect in a black Chanel blazer that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her expression was carved from marble, but her manicured fingers drummed softly against the white tablecloth, the only sign of tension. "This better be important," she said as Colton sat down. "I don't appreciate cryptic phone calls." Colton placed a manila envelope on the table between them. "Your husband is sleeping with my wife." Delaney's hand froze halfway to her water glass. Her blue eyes narrowed, searching his face for any sign of deception. "Excuse me? I have proof." He opened the envelope methodically, laying out photographs, text messages, hotel receipts. They've been meeting for months, usually during late meetings or business lunches. She examined each piece of evidence with the precision of a jeweler appraising diamonds. The first photo showed Jackson and Laney entering the Rivera Hotel. The second caught them at their favorite bistro, heads close together. The third, Jackson kissing Laney in his car, made Delaney's perfectly painted lips thin into a hard line. "That son of a bitch," she whispered, her composure cracking slightly. Then, straightening her shoulders, "How long have you known?" "A week. I've been gathering evidence." Colton leaned back, studying her reaction. "I assume this isn't the first time?" Delaney laughed, but it held no humor. "Oh, Jackson has a type. Married women, preferably from our social circle. Makes them feel special, desired." She took a measured sip of water. "I've known about the others. Turned a blind eye for the sake of our position, our reputation. But this," she gestured at the photos, "this is different. Because it's personal? Because it's an opportunity." She met his gaze directly. "You didn't invite me here just to show me evidence. You have a plan?" Colton smiled coldly. "The Thompson Charity Gala is next week. Everyone who matters in Chicago will be there, including our unfaithful spouses. And instead of confronting them now, giving them a chance to spin their lies, we make them watch their world burn." He pulled out the gala invitation. "We attend together. Let them see us. Let them wonder. Let them squirm. Then, when the moment is right, we expose everything." Delaney studied him for a long moment, her expression calculating. "You want to destroy them publicly. I want them to feel what we feel. The uncertainty, the fear, the knowledge that their whole world could collapse at any moment." He paused. "But I need someone who understands their world. Someone who knows where to hit them where it hurts most. Their reputations," Delaney said softly. "Their social standing. Everything they've built their lives around." A cold smile played at her lips. "Mr. Ramsey, I believe this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership." They spent the next hour planning, dissecting every detail. Delaney would arrive in Colton's car, making their entrance impossible to ignore. They would coordinate their movements throughout the evening, always visible, always together. Jackson hates not being in control, Delaney explained, her voice rich with years of observation. He'll start making mistakes, especially if he thinks I might know about the affair. And Laney can't stand being ignored, Colton added. Seeing us together will drive her crazy, but she won't be able to say anything without exposing herself. The beauty of it, Delaney mused, is that they'll have to watch and wonder. Is it real? Do we know? Are we actually together? Or is it all for show? She raised her wine glass. It's rather poetic, don't you think? Making them experience the same uncertainty they inflicted on us. Speaking of uncertainty, Colton pulled out another envelope, this one thicker than the first. I had these drawn up yesterday. Delaney opened it, her eyebrows rising slightly as she read. Divorce papers. Well prepared, I see. I believe in being thorough. As do I. She reached into her designer handbag, producing her own envelope. Already had my lawyers draft them. I was just waiting for the right moment. Their eyes met in perfect understanding. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about taking back control from those who had betrayed them. To new beginnings, Delaney raised her glass. And spectacular endings. Colton clinked his glass against hers. They spent another hour refining their plan. Every detail had to be perfect. Their arrival time, their behavior, the gradual escalation that would drive Laney and Jackson to distraction. One last thing, Delaney said as they prepared to leave. No backing out. Once we start this, we see it through to the end. Trust me, Colton's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Backing out is the last thing on my mind. The week before the gala stretched like a wire-pulled taut, ready to snap. Colton moved through his days with calculated precision, each moment bringing him closer to the night of reckoning. At home, he maintained his facade of ignorance, watching Laney's preparations with cold amusement. She bought a new dress for the gala, an elegant black number that cost more than most people's rent. Probably purchased with the credit card he'd given her for their 10th anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on him. What do you think? Laney asked, modeling the dress in their bedroom mirror. Not too much. It's perfect, he replied, and it was perfect for her public humiliation. You'll be the center of attention. She beamed at his response, completely missing the dark promise in his words. You're sweet. Oh, and don't forget to pick up your new tux from the tailor. Already done? He didn't mention that he'd chosen a different tux, one that would complement Delaney's dress perfectly. They'd planned every detail, down to the color of his pocket square, matching her jewelry. Throughout the week, Colton and Delaney coordinated via secure emails, leaving nothing to chance. They met twice more, each time in different locations to avoid suspicion. The Four Seasons had been replaced by discreet coffee shops in neighborhoods where neither Laney nor Jackson would think to look. Jackson's getting nervous, Delaney reported during their last meeting, stirring her espresso with precise movements. He noticed I've been taking calls in private. Started asking questions about my schedule. Good. Colton checked his phone, where a text from Laney claimed she was at a supplier meeting. His tracking app showed her at the Rivera Hotel. Let him squirm. I had my lawyers add something special to the divorce papers. Delaney's smile was razor-sharp. A clause about moral turpitude that'll cost him control of 3 of his biggest properties. Thorough. I learned from the best. Him? She leaned forward. What about your preparations? Colton pulled out his phone, showing her the latest addition to their plan. I hired someone to record everything at the gala. Multiple angles, professional quality. When this hits social media, there won't be a single society event in Chicago they'll be welcome at again. 2 days before the gala, Laney grew clingy, almost desperate for his attention. It was as if she sensed something coming, some instinct warning her of the approaching storm. She suggested they have dinner together, cook at home like they used to. I miss spending time with you, she said, chopping vegetables in their kitchen. We've both been so busy lately. Colton watched her hands move, remembering all the times they'd cooked together in happier days. Yes, we have been busy, haven't we? All those late meetings, client dinners. She faltered for just a moment, the knife hesitating above the cutting board. Well, that's business, isn't it? But this is us time. He smiled, knowing it would be one of their last meals together. Of course, us time. The night before the gala, Colton reviewed everything one final time. The divorce papers waited in his safe. Every page carefully prepared to strip Lainey of everything she'd gained through their marriage. The evidence was organized chronologically. Photos, messages, hotel receipts, all ready to be displayed on the gala's massive screens. His phone buzzed with a text from Delaney. Everything ready for tomorrow. All set. No turning back now, good. They won't know what hit them. Colton stood at their bedroom window, looking out over the Chicago skyline. Behind him, Lainey slept peacefully, unaware that this would be their last night as husband and wife. Tomorrow, her comfortable world would shatter like fine crystal dropped on marble floors that he thought about their marriage vows, about promises of faithfulness and honor. She'd made those promises while looking into his eyes, her voice steady, her smile bright. All lies. Tomorrow, she'd learn the price of betrayal. His phone buzzed one last time. Delaney again. Sweet dreams. Tomorrow, we take back everything they stole from us. Colton smiled into the darkness. Tomorrow, Chicago's elite would witness a scandal they'd never forget. Tomorrow, Lainey and Jackson would learn that their clever little affair had been the biggest mistake of their lives. But tonight? Tonight was for savoring the anticipation, for knowing that in less than 24 hours, justice would be served cold, calculated, and without mercy. The Thompson Charity Gala transformed the Crystal Ballroom of the Drake Hotel into a glittering spectacle of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over Chicago's elite as they paraded in their finest. Air thick with expensive perfume and whispered gossip, Colton watched through the tinted windows of his Mercedes as the valet helped Delaney out. She was stunning in a deep blue designer gown that whispered money and power, diamonds glinting at her throat and ears. Their entrance had been timed perfectly, fashionably late enough to ensure all eyes would be on them. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. That Delaney's red lips curved into a predatory smile. "Born ready. Let's give them a show they'll never forget." Through the grand doors, they could already see Lainey and Jackson inside. They were standing near the bar, champagne flutes in hand, looking perfectly at ease in their betrayal. Lainey wore the new black dress, while Jackson sported a custom tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Remember," Delaney whispered, her grip tightening on Colton's arm. "Let them come to us. The more we ignore them, the faster they'll crack." They made their entrance with calculated grace. The effect was immediate. Conversations stuttered to a halt as heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through tall grass. "Is that Colton Ramsey with Delaney Hale? But aren't they? Oh my God, look at Lainey's face." Colton caught the exact moment Lainey saw them. The color drained from her face, her champagne flute freezing halfway to her lips. Beside her, Jackson's confident smirk faltered, his knuckles whitening around his glass. "Mr. Ramsey." Richard Thompson, their host, approached with an outstretched hand. "And Mrs. Hale. What a unexpected pleasure to see you together." "Richard." Colton smiled warmly, shaking his hand. "Delaney and I have been working closely on some exciting new ventures." "Very exciting," Delaney added, her voice carrying just far enough to reach Lainey and Jackson. "Colton has been absolutely instrumental in helping me explore new opportunities." The innuendo wasn't lost on anyone, least of all their spouses. From the corner of his eye, Colton saw Lainey set her glass down with shaking hands. "Darling." Delaney touched his arm, the gesture intimate and deliberate. "Shall we get some champagnes?" They moved through the crowd like royalty, accepting greetings and making small talk while steadfastly ignoring their spouses. Every touch, every laugh, every whispered conversation was choreographed for maximum impact. "They're watching us," Delaney murmured behind her champagne glass. "Jackson looks like he's about to burst a blood vessel." "Good." Colton placed his hand on the small of her back, leading her toward the dance floor. "Let's give them something else to watch." The orchestra was playing a slow waltz. Colton pulled Delaney close, their bodies moving together with practiced ease. They'd rehearsed this, knowing every eye in the room would be on them. "Your wife is about to have a meltdown," Delaney observed, her lips curved in amusement. "She's changed colors 3 times in the last minute. Jackson's not doing much better. Look at how he's grinding his teeth." They continued their dance, every movement designed to torture their watching spouses. Colton's hand traced patterns on Delaney's back. She laughed at something he whispered in her ear. To anyone watching, they looked like two people in the throes of a new romance. Finally, Laney cracked. She moved toward them with determined steps, her face a mask of forced politeness. Colton, her voice was tight, controlled. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" He turned to her slowly, as if just noticing her presence. "Laney, you look tense. Is everything all right? Please." She glanced at Delaney, then back to him. "Just for a minute?" Colton pretended to consider it, his hand still resting possessively on Delaney's waist. "Actually, I promised Delaney the next dance. Perhaps later. This is important. More important than my date." He raised an eyebrow. "That would be rather rude of me, wouldn't it?" Laney's composure slipped for just a moment, raw panic flashing across her face. "What are you doing?" she hissed, dropping all pretense. "Dancing," he replied simply. "With a beautiful woman. Is there something wrong with that?" The orchestra shifted to another slow dance as Laney stood there, her composure crumbling by the second. Around them, other guests pretended not to watch while hanging on every word. "Colton, please." Laney's voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "What's going on between you and Delaney?" He turned to Delaney with a soft smile. "What do you think, darling? Should we tell her what's going on?" Delaney traced a finger down his lapel. "I think some things are better left to the imagination. Don't you?" "You're right as always." He turned back to Laney. "I'm sure you understand. After all, you're quite good at keeping secrets yourself, aren't you?" The color drained from Laney's face. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, nothing specific." Colton's voice was casual, but his eyes were cold. "Just that everyone has their little secrets. Don't they, sweetheart?" Before Laney could respond, Jackson appeared at her side. His confident swagger was gone, replaced by barely contained rage. "Enough games, Ramsey. What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Jackson." Delaney's voice dripped with false sweetness. "How nice of you to join us. We were just discussing secrets. You must have some fascinating insights on that topic." "Delaney," Jackson started, but she cut him off. "No, really, darling. Tell us all about it. About all those late meetings, those business dinners, those special clients." Her smile was sharp as a blade. "You always did have such interesting stories." More guests were gathering nearby, drawn by the mounting tension. Whispers circulated through the crowd like electricity. "This isn't the place," Jackson growled, his fists clenching. "No." Colton raised an eyebrow. "I thought you loved an audience, Jackson. You certainly seemed to enjoy showing off at the Drake Hotel last month. Though I suppose you thought no one was watching then." Jackson's face went from red to white in an instant. "You me?" Colton's smile never wavered. "I'm just making conversation. Unless there's something specific you'd like to discuss." Laney grabbed Colton's arm. "Stop it. Whatever you think you know. Think." He looked down at her hand until she released him. "Oh, I don't think, Laney. I know. Every detail. Every meeting. Every lie. You're making a scene," she hissed. "Am I? I thought I was just enjoying the party with my date." He turned to Delaney. "Another dance?" "Love to." She stepped closer to him, making sure Jackson got a good view of her hand sliding up Colton's chest. "Although I was thinking we might want to get some air on the terrace later. It's such a lovely night for stargazing." Jackson's jaw clenched so hard they could hear his teeth grinding. "Delaney, we're leaving. Now." She laughed, the sound like crystal breaking. "Oh, darling. You stopped having any say in what I do the moment you decided to fuck my friend's wife." The words hit like a thunderclap. Nearby conversations stopped dead. Someone gasped. Laney swayed on her feet, grabbing a passing waiter's tray for support. "You don't know what you're talking about," Jackson snarled, but his voice shook. "No." Delaney's smile widened. "The Rivera Hotel. The River North Bistro. That charming little spot in the Gold Coast. Should I continue? I have dates, times, receipts. You're drunk." He tried, but the panic in his eyes was unmistakable. "Hardly." She turned to Colton. "Darling, wasn't it the 14th when they spent 3 hours in that private booth at Maison Laurent? Or was it the 15th? "The 14th, Colton confirmed, his voice cold and precise. "The same day Laney told me she was working late on the Peterson account. Funny coincidence that." Laney made a small, broken sound. Colton, I can explain. Can you? He turned to her, and for the first time, let her see the full force of his rage. Can you explain why you broke every vow we made? Why you looked me in the eye and lied day after day? Why you let this piece of shit touch you? Don't talk about him like that. The words burst from her before she could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. Laney clapped a hand over her mouth, realizing too late what she'd revealed. Well, Colton's voice was deadly quiet. At least now we know where your loyalties lie. Jackson stepped forward, trying to salvage some control of the situation. You think you're so clever, don't you, Ramsey? Playing these games, making these accusations, games? Colton laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about games, Jackson? Like the game where you fuck other men's wives? Or the one where you pretend to be a respectable businessman while destroying families? Watch your mouth, Jackson warned, his face darkening. Or what? You'll try to ruin me like you did to Richard Martinez when your affair with his wife came out? Or Thomas Blake when you couldn't keep your hands off his wife? Colton stepped closer, his voice dropping. You're a predator, Jackson. A pathetic little man who gets off on taking what belongs to others. I said watch your mouth. Jackson's control snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing Colton's lapel. The room erupted in gasps and exclamations. But Colton didn't move, didn't even flinch. He just smiled, cold and deadly. Go ahead, he said softly. Show everyone exactly who you are. Jackson's grip on Colton's lapel tightened, his knuckles white with rage. The crowd around them drew back, forming a circle of shocked faces and whispered commentary. You think you can come in here, Jackson snarled, spread your lies, try to ruin my reputation? Your reputation? Colton's laugh was cold enough to freeze blood. The only person who ruined your reputation is you. I'm just making sure everyone knows exactly who Jackson Hale really is. You don't know anything about me. I know everything. Colton didn't move to break free, his calm only infuriating Jackson further. Every dirty deal, every affair, every time you've destroyed lives for your own pleasure. Tell me, does it make you feel powerful? Taking other men's wives? Ruining families? Jackson, stop. Laney's voice cracked with panic. Please, you're making it worse. Shut up. Jackson snapped at her. And in that moment of distraction, Colton moved with lightning speed. He grabbed Jackson's wrist and twisted, forcing the bigger man to release his grip. Jackson stumbled back, his face contorting with rage. Don't you ever. Colton's voice was lethal. Tell my wife to shut up. Your wife. Jackson sneered, recovering his balance. The same wife who's been warming my bed for months? The one who begs for me, who can't get enough. Colton's fist connected with Jackson's jaw before he could finish the sentence. The crack of impact echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Jackson reeled backward, blood trickling from his split lip. For a moment, complete silence fell over the room. Then Jackson touched his bleeding mouth, looked at his red-stained fingers, and lunged with a roar of rage. His wild swing caught Colton's shoulder, but Colton had been ready for it. He stepped into the punch, using Jackson's momentum against him to drive his fist into the man's ribs. The sound of cracking bone was viscerally satisfying. Colton, stop! Laney screamed, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. Jackson tried to grapple, but his technique was sloppy, all fury and no finesse. Colton slipped under his guard and delivered a brutal uppercut that snapped Jackson's head back. Security! Someone shouted. Somebody call security. But no one moved to intervene. The crowd watched, horrified and fascinated, as Chicago's elite real estate mogul got systematically demolished by the man he'd betrayed. Jackson swung again, desperation making him clumsy. Colton blocked the punch and countered with a devastating blow to his solar plexus. As Jackson doubled over, gasping for air, Colton grabbed his hair and drove his knee into the man's face. Blood sprayed across the marble floor. Jackson went down hard, his nose clearly broken. Get up, Colton commanded, his voice eerily calm. Show everyone how tough you are, Jackson. Show them what a big man you are. Jackson tried to rise, blood streaming down his face, but Colton's foot caught him in the ribs, sending him sprawling again. What's wrong? Colton circled him, like a predator. Not so confident without your lies to hide behind? You're insane, Jackson choked out, spitting blood. No. Colton crouched beside him, his voice pitched for Jackson alone. I'm just better than you. At everything. Including this. He punctuated the words with another punch that left Jackson curled on the floor, moaning, Colton, please. Laney grabbed his arm. You'll kill him. He shook her off with enough force to send her stumbling. Don't touch me. Listen to your wife, Ramsey, Jackson managed through bloody teeth. Or what's left of her. The taunt was a mistake. Colton's next punch knocked out two of Jackson's teeth. Finally, hotel security burst through the crowd. Two burly men in black suits moved to restrain Colton, but he stepped back on his own, straightening his jacket with precise movements. No need, gentlemen. His voice was perfectly controlled again. I believe Mr. Hale, and I have finished our discussion. Delaney, who had watched the entire scene with cold satisfaction, stepped forward. Actually, darling, I believe we have one more item on tonight's agenda. She nodded toward the ballroom's massive screens, normally used for charity auction displays. Colton smiled, reaching for his phone. You're right, of course. He pressed a button, and the screens flickered to life. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it's time for a toast. The ballroom screens came alive with images, each more damning than the last. Jackson and Laney entering hotels. Secret meetings caught on security cameras. Screenshots of text messages. Hotel receipts. Every piece of evidence meticulously documented, displayed in high definition for Chicago's elite to see. Colton grabbed a fresh champagne flute from a passing waiter, his composure perfect despite the violent moments before. Not a hair was out of place, not a wrinkle marred his tuxedo. The same couldn't be said for Jackson, who was still bleeding on the marble floor. Ladies and gentlemen, Colton's voice carried clearly through the stunned silence. I'd like to propose a toast. Colton, don't. Laney's makeup was streaked with tears, her perfect facade finally cracking. Please, we can talk about this privately. Privately? He turned to her, eyes cold. Like how you and Jackson kept your affair private. How you snuck around behind our backs, thinking you were so clever, so discreet. The screens shifted to show more evidence. Intimate text messages, hotel booking confirmations, security footage timestamps. You see, Colton addressed the crowd, my wife and our dear friend Jackson have been quite busy these past few months. While I was working to build our life together, while Delaney was playing the devoted wife, these two were meeting in hotel rooms across Chicago. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd. Several guests pulled out their phones, recording everything. Colton, Laney sobbed, I can explain. Explain? His laugh was sharp as broken glass. Explain how you broke every vow we made? How you looked me in the eye and lied, day after day? No, Laney, you don't get to explain. He nodded to Delaney, who produced an envelope from her clutch. In fact, she said, her voice carrying clearly, I don't think either of you will be doing much explaining anymore. She walked to where Jackson was struggling to sit up, security guards hovering uncertainly nearby. With deliberate movements, she opened the envelope and let the papers flutter down around him. Divorce papers, darling, she announced. Plus evidence of your multiple affairs, fraudulent business dealings, and tax evasion. I'm sure the IRS and the Securities and Exchange Commission will find it fascinating reading. You can't, Jackson sputtered through his bloody mouth. I already have. She smiled, cold and triumphant. You taught me well, remember? Always keep leverage on everyone. I learned from the best. Colton pulled out his own envelope, thick with legal documents. And Laney, these are for you. He tossed the papers at her feet. She stared at them, her face ashen. No, she whispered. Yes. He raised his glass. So, let's toast. To my dear wife and our friend Jackson. To their secrets and lies. To their arrogance in thinking they'd never be caught. To karma, Delaney added. Raising her own glass with elegant precision, Laney crumpled to the floor, sobbing openly now. Jackson tried to stand, but couldn't manage it, his injuries and humiliation leaving him broken on the marble. You've ruined everything, Laney choked out. No, sweetheart. Colton's voice was ice. You did that all on your own. I just made sure everyone knows exactly who you are." He turned to address the shocked crowd. "And speaking of everyone knowing, the evidence you've seen tonight has already been sent to every major news outlet in Chicago. I'm sure tomorrow's headlines will be fascinating reading." "You bastard," Jackson growled from the floor. "That's rich coming from you." Colton smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "How's your face feeling, by the way? I hope I didn't damage anything permanently. Though I suppose your modeling career was never going to take off anyway." Delaney stepped over her husband's prone form like he was nothing more than a minor obstacle. "I think it's time we made our exit, darling. The air in here has become rather stale." "Couldn't agree more." Colton offered her his arm. "Though one last thing." He walked to where Laney knelt among the scattered divorce papers. Crouching down, he spoke softly, but his words carried in the silent room. "Remember how you said you could explain?" He waited until she looked up at him, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Don't bother. There's nothing you could say that would make me forgive you. Nothing that would make this okay. You're dead to me, Laney. From this moment on, you don't exist." Standing, he straightened his cuffs and returned to Delaney. Together, they walked toward the exit, the crowd parting before them like the Red Sea behind them. They left destruction. Laney sobbing on the floor, Jackson bleeding and humiliated. Their reputations, their social standing, their carefully constructed lives, all of it shattered beyond repair. And Colton? He felt nothing but satisfaction. Justice had been served, cold and merciless, exactly as planned. The morning sun painted Chicago's skyline in shades of gold, but the headlines painted it in scandal. Colton sat in his new penthouse apartment, sipping coffee and reading the Chicago Tribune's front page, "Real estate mogul's affair exposed. Shocking gala confrontation rocks Chicago elite." His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Texts, calls, emails, everyone wanted his side of the story. He ignored them all, enjoying the quiet satisfaction of victory that a knock at his door broke the morning silence. Through the security camera, he saw Laney standing in the hallway, looking nothing like the polished society wife she'd once been. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her designer clothes wrinkled as if she'd slept in them. "Go away, Laney," he called through the intercom. "Please," her voice cracked. "Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. You had 10 years. You wasted them. Colton, I love you." He cut off the intercom. Through the camera, he watched her slide down the wall, sobbing. Let her cry. Her tears meant nothing to him now. His phone buzzed again, Delaney this time. "Have you seen the news?" she asked when he picked up. "Hard to miss." He took another sip of coffee. "How's Jackson handling his newfound fame?" "Poorly." Her laugh was rich with satisfaction. "The SEC launched an investigation this morning. Turns out our evidence of his creative accounting practices caught their attention. 3 of his biggest projects are now under scrutiny." "What a shame." "Indeed. And that's not all. 2 more wives have come forward with similar stories. Seems Jackson's predatory pattern is finally catching up to him." Colton smiled. "How's the divorce proceeding?" "My lawyers are circling like sharks. With the morality clause in our prenup and evidence of his affairs, I'll take him for everything he's worth." She paused. "Speaking of which, have you heard from Laney? She's currently crying outside my door." "How pathetic." Delaney's voice dripped contempt. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing. She doesn't exist anymore, remember?" Another knock at his door interrupted them. This time, it was his building's security team. "Mr. Ramsey," the head of security stood with 2 officers. "Your wife is causing a scene in the hallway. Would you like us to remove her?" "Ex-wife," Colton corrected coldly. "And yes, please remove her. She's not welcome here." Through the camera, he watched them approach Laney. "Mrs. Ramsey, you need to leave," the security guard said firmly. "No, please." Laney struggled to her feet. "Colton, just let me explain. Please." "Ma'am, don't make this harder than it needs to be." "You don't understand," she sobbed. "He's my husband." "Not anymore," Colton said through the intercom. "The divorce papers were served last night. Remember? Now get out of my building before I have you arrested for trespassing." The next week unfolded like a slow-motion car crash for Laney and Jackson. Colton watched it all from a comfortable distance. each new development confirming that his revenge had exceeded even his expectations. His phone rang. Monica, his assistant. Mr. Ramsey? Laney's on line 3. Again. That's her 7th call today. Keep blocking her. He turned to his office window, watching a storm roll in over Lake Michigan. Any other news? Yes, sir. The Chicago Business Journal wants your comment on Jackson Hale's company's stock dropping 60% since Monday. Colton smiled. Tell them no comment, though you might mention that karma's a fascinating thing. One more thing. Monica hesitated. Mr. Reynolds wants to see you. About making you managing partner. Really? Colton raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. He said, and I quote, anyone who can orchestrate that level of strategic takedown belongs in our leadership. A knock on his office door interrupted them. Richard Thompson stood there, looking uncomfortable in his $1,000 suit. Colton, do you have a minute? Of course, Richard. Come in. He ended the call with Monica and gestured to a chair. What brings Chicago's premier real estate developer to my humble office? Richard shifted nervously. It's about Jackson. He's trying to salvage what's left of his business. He asked me to talk to you. Did he? Colton's voice turned arctic. And why would I be interested in anything Jackson has to say? Look, what he did was wrong. Unforgivable, even. But his company employs hundreds of people. Innocent people who might lose everything. Like how he made other people lose everything. Colton leaned forward. Tell me, Richard, did he send you to plead for Thomas Blake when Jackson ruined his business? Or for Richard Martinez when he destroyed his marriage and career? That was different. No, it wasn't. Jackson made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. Colton's smile was sharp. And speaking of consequences, I heard the SEC is very interested in some of your joint ventures with him. Might want to get your lawyers ready. Richard paled. Are you threatening me? Not at all. Just offering friendly advice between colleagues. Colton stood. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my divorce attorney. The law offices of Jensen and Partners occupied the top floor of a Michigan Avenue high-rise. Patricia Jensen, Chicago's most feared divorce attorney, greeted Colton with the smile of a shark scenting blood. The papers are ready, she said, pulling out a thick file. Your wife, excuse me, soon-to-be ex-wife won't know what hit her. Has she hired representation? Tried to. But after that gala video went viral, most top firms won't touch her. Afraid of antagonizing your connections. Patricia's smile widened. She's working with some strip mall lawyer from Naperville. Perfect. Colton reviewed the documents. What about the house? You'll keep it. The prenup is ironclad, and with proof of her infidelity, she violates the morality clause. She gets nothing except what she brought into the marriage. Good. He signed where indicated. Make sure she's served at her office. Maximum embarrassment. His phone buzzed a text from Delaney. Turn on Channel 5 News. Now he grabbed the remote from Patricia's desk, switching on the wall-mounted TV. Jackson's bruised face filled the screen, standing outside his office building while reporters shouted questions. Mr. Hale, is it true the SEC is investigating your company? What about the allegations of systematic fraud? Have more women come forward about affairs? Jackson looked nothing like the confident mogul he'd once been. His designer's suit hung loose, his face still showing traces of Colton's beating. I have no comment at this time, he stammered. My attorneys will, Mr. Hale. Another reporter pushed forward. Sources say your biggest investors are pulling out. Is your company facing bankruptcy? The fear that flashed across Jackson's face was answer enough. Colton watched with satisfaction as the man who'd thought himself untouchable crumbled on live television. His phone buzzed again. Delaney. Beautiful, isn't it? Watching them fall apart very. How are the divorce proceedings going? Wonderfully. My lawyers found offshore accounts he thought he'd hidden. I'm taking everything. Colton was about to reply when Patricia interrupted. There's something else you should see. She handed him her tablet, showing a social media post from Laney. I know I made terrible mistakes. I betrayed the best man I've ever known. Colton, if you're reading this, please. I'm begging for a chance to explain. To make things right. I'll do anything. Pathetic, Colton muttered, handing back the tablet. Make sure that post gets included in the divorce filing. Shows she's admitting to the affair publicly. Already done? Patricia gathered the papers. You know, in 20 years of handling divorces, I've never seen a more thorough destruction of someone's life. It's almost beautiful. Almost. Colton stood, straightening his tie. It's a masterpiece. A month after the gala, Chicago's social landscape had shifted dramatically. Colton sat in his new corner office at Reynolds and Burke, now as managing partner, reading the latest headlines on his tablet. Hale Properties files for bankruptcy. SEC investigation expands. More charges expected. Society scandal leads to mass exodus of investors. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Ramsey? Laney's mother is here to see you. Colton sighed. Send her in. Eleanor Williams entered, looking every bit the society matron in her Chanel suit and pearls. But her usual imperious expression had been replaced by desperation. Colton, please. She didn't wait for an invitation to sit. You have to stop this. Stop what? Eleanor? The consequences of your daughter's actions. She's destroyed Colton. Her business is failing. No one will work with her. She had to move back home because she can't afford an apartment. She cries herself to sleep every night. How tragic. His voice could have frozen hell. Tell me, did she cry herself to sleep while she was fucking Jackson Hale? Or did she sleep just fine after lying to my face? She made a terrible mistake. No, Colton cut her off. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. What she did was a choice. Multiple choices, made day after day, for months. But you loved her once, and she killed that love. He stood, towering over her. Now, unless you want your family's financial dealings scrutinized as closely as Jackson's, I suggest you leave. Now. After she left, his phone rang. Delaney, you'll never believe who just tried to approach me at the spa, she said without preamble. Jackson's mother. Colton laughed. Let me guess. Begging for mercy? Claimed he's having a breakdown. Apparently, he's been drinking heavily, rambling about revenge. She thinks he might do something desperate. Let him try. Colton's voice hardened. I'd love an excuse for round 2. That won't be necessary. He could hear her smile. The FBI just raided his offices. Seems all that evidence we gathered led them to a massive fraud scheme. He'll be lucky to stay out of prison. Later that afternoon, Colton's lawyer called with updates on the divorce proceedings. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Laney would be left with nothing, no alimony, no property, not even her wedding rings, that as he hung up, his office door burst open. Jackson stumbled in, drunk and disheveled, his once immaculate appearance now a wreck. You bastard, he slurred, swaying on his feet. You've ruined everything. Colton didn't even stand. Security will be here in 30 seconds. Make them count. My company, my reputation, everything I built. You did that yourself? Colton's voice was ice. Every time you chose to fuck another man's wife. Every time you destroyed someone else's life for your own pleasure. I just made sure everyone saw you for what you really are. I'll kill you. Jackson lunged forward, but security caught him before he made it 2 steps. Get him out of here, Colton ordered. And make sure he's charged with trespassing and threatening bodily harm. As they dragged Jackson away, his threats echoing down the hallway, Colton's phone buzzed with a text. A video link from one of his contacts, Laney, being served with the final divorce papers in front of her failing design studio. The footage showed her crumpling to the ground, sobbing as curious onlookers filmed with their phones. More social media fodder, more public humiliation. Perfect that evening, he met Delaney for drinks at the Peninsula's rooftop bar. She looked triumphant, radiating the satisfaction of a predator after a successful hunt. The divorce is final, she announced, raising her martini. I got everything, the houses, the cars, even his precious art collection. His lawyers folded like cheap suits once I threatened to expose more of his affairs. Congratulations. Colton clinked his glass against hers. To freedom and justice. She smiled. You know, I almost feel sorry for them. Almost. Don't. They made their choices. Speaking of choices, she set down her glass. I'm moving to New York, taking over the East Coast operations of his company. Well, my company now. Good for you. You could come with me. She touched his hand. We work well together. Colton withdrew his hand gently. We worked well for revenge. But that's done now. She nodded, unsurprised. No regrets? None. He looked out over the city lights. They thought they could play their little games, keep their secrets. They never saw the storm coming. And now they've lost everything. Everything, he agreed. Just like they deserve. 3 months after the gala, Chicago's winter had settled in, coating the city in pristine white that matched the coldness in Colton's heart. He stood in his new penthouse, watching snowflakes dance past floor-to-ceiling windows while reading the latest news on his tablet. Jackson Hale, indicted on federal fraud charges. Former real estate mogul faces 20 years. Scandal continues. Hale Properties assets seized. His phone buzzed a text from Delaney. Have you seen the news? They're leading him out in handcuffs. It's beautiful. Attached was a video clip. Jackson, once the epitome of power and privilege, being escorted from his home by FBI agents. His designer suit had been replaced by wrinkled business casual, his confident swagger reduced to a defeated shuffle that couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Colton replied, "Thought you'd appreciate that. By the way, heard anything from Lainey recently?" "Not since the divorce was finalized. Last I heard, she's working as a junior designer at some suburban firm. Quite a fall from her own Chicago studio. Karma's a bitch. Speaking of which, settling in well in New York." The view from Jackson's former office is spectacular. Colton smiled, remembering how thoroughly Delaney had stripped her ex-husband of everything. She'd taken control of his company, his properties, even his club memberships. The man who'd thought himself untouchable was now facing prison with nothing left to his name. A notification popped up on his tablet. An email from his lawyer. The house had sold, well above asking price. The last physical tie to his life with Lainey gone. He'd donated all her remaining belongings to charity, erasing every trace of her from his life. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Ramsey, there's a delivery for you. Send it up." Minutes later, he signed for a package. Inside was a letter from Lainey, handwritten on expensive stationery. Her last attempt at contact, Colton, "I know nothing I say can fix what I destroyed. The life we had, the trust one broke, it's all gone, and I have no one to blame but myself. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that losing you, watching you walk away that night at the gala, was the moment I truly understood what I'd thrown away. You were everything to me, and I ruined it all for nothing. Jackson was a mistake, a stupid, terrible mistake that cost me the only man I'll ever truly love. I'm leaving Chicago. There's nothing left for me here but memories and regret. I won't contact you again. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. Even though I know sorry will never be enough, always." Lainey Colton read the letter twice, then dropped it into his crystal whiskey tumbler. Pulling out his lighter, he watched the paper catch fire, curling and blackening until nothing remained but ashes floating in the amber liquid. Walking to his wine cellar, a feature that had sold him on the penthouse, he selected a bottle of Macallan 25, the same scotch he'd been saving for his and Lainey's anniversary. It seemed fitting to drink it now, marking a different kind of milestone. The liquid caught the light as he poured, golden as the wedding ring he'd sold the day after the gala. He moved to the window, looking out over his city. Chicago spread before him, its lights twinkling through the falling snow like stars. Everything had worked out perfectly. Jackson was facing prison, his empire destroyed, his reputation in tatters. Lainey had lost her business, her social standing, her entire world. Their punishment had been complete, absolute, and exactly what they deserved. Colton raised his glass to his reflection in the window. In the darkened glass, he saw not just himself, but the man he'd become. Stronger, colder, completely free of the weakness of forgiveness. "To karma," he said softly. "To justice. To the perfect revenge." He sipped the scotch, savoring its rich complexity. Like revenge, it had taken time to mature, but the wait had made it all the sweeter. His phone buzzed one final time, a news alert. Jackson's bail had been denied. He would await trial in federal custody, his lawyer's arguments about flight risk deemed valid given his dwindling resources and multiple offshore accounts. Colton smiled, remembering Jackson's face that night at the gala, bleeding and broken on the marble floor. The physical beating had been satisfying, but this complete destruction of everything the man had built was infinitely better. Taking another sip, he watched the snow fall, content in the knowledge that he'd orchestrated the perfect revenge. No forgiveness, No mercy, just pure, cold justice served exactly as he'd planned. Now that, he said to the empty room, is a toast worth remembering.